Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today as we discuss the latest Tennessee Achieves data. We're thrilled to be here with you. So a little bit about run of show before I jump into the data. Today, we're going to talk for about 20 minutes and walk you through the success of the program and also talk about some friction points that remain. We're very transparent at Tennessee Achieves about what's working well, and quite frankly, what's something that we really need to continue to focus on and dig into to try to, for example, close some critical equity gaps that you'll see here in a bit. So again, spend about 20 minutes looking at the data. Want to give a specific shout out to Ben Sterling from our team, who I've known since he was 17. He was a member of the first class of Knox Achieves, who not only created our annual report, taught from scratch, but also has created this PowerPoint, makes us look really good in the design space and all done in-house. So super thanks to Ben for that work. So from there, we will transition to a panel of friends of Tennessee Achieves, a student, a president of a community college, and a local business person who will share the impact of Tennessee Achieves with you. So that's run of show. And I always forget to do this. Number one, my name is Krissy DeAlajandro. I've been doing this for 14 years, so I just sort of jump into the work. I get super eager and excited to do those things. So again, thanks for joining us. I'm going to walk us through the slides, but as a quick note, please feel free. At the end, we're going to carve out 10 or 15 minutes for any questions that you may have. So please feel free to put those questions in the chat, whether they're for our panelists or they're for me. We'll be happy to answer those questions at the end. So let's get right to it. You see here, a really important piece of our work is sharing our story. So for those of you who do not know, a 30-second overview of the Tennessee Achieves story is we actually launched in 2008 as Knox Achieves, operating for public high school seniors, specifically in Knox County. The idea was to bring the student who never thought that college was an option into the college pipeline and support them until they earned that important college credential. So if you fast forward 3 years from 2008, we launched Tennessee Achieves in 2011, beginning to spread our mission, much to the thanks of Governor Haslam, who was a mayor at the time and sat on our original board, but also to our other board members at the time. There would be no Tennessee Achieves without Randy Boyd, Tim Williams, Rich Ray, Buzz Thomas, and Mike Ragsdale. And so with a lot of support and encouragement, we began spreading our mission in 2011. And then many of you know the launch of Tennessee Promise that happened in 2014 with the class of 2015. So we currently support students in 83 of Tennessee's 95 counties. We serve 601 high schools, 67 post-secondary institutions, the majority of our students attending one of our state's 13 community colleges. We couldn't be bigger fans of community colleges at Tennessee Achieves. We also support students to our technical colleges, also an amazing opportunity for many of our students. And then those four-year institutions that offer associate's degrees for our students. You can see here, this is a waterfall look at our students. It is what we do in Tennessee. I'm going to show you a slide in just a bit that really depicts this, but every student, regardless of their post-secondary intentions, applies for Tennessee Promise. So if you are off to, we were just talking about my alma mater. So if you're off to Sewanee, if you're off to the University of Alabama, UT, colleges outside of the Tennessee Promise umbrella, you are still completing that college application. A huge thanks to our school counselors who just really get it. They want their kids to go somewhere, and so they're ensuring that all students have a really solid plan A, but also that backup plan as well. Tennessee continues to lead the country in FAFSA completion, that free application for federal student aid that tends to be incredibly daunting for students and families. We all pull in the same direction here. The magic really is, it's an all hands on deck. From October of every year through just yesterday, we closed the FAFSA for our 2022 Tennessee Promise students and our college students who hope to continue with Tennessee Promise. We also have mandatory meetings. Pre-COVID, they were in these giant sweaty gyms and classrooms, and this was allowing our students and mentors to interface for the first time. Since then, we've launched Tennessee Achieves Connect, which we love, and this year we're hosting a hybrid. You can do Connect, you can come to a Tennessee Achieves open house, but the point is mentors really matter, and we'll talk about that a bit. You can see students completing community service, about 26,000 students this year completing community service. That holds true just about every year. Many of our students are deciding at this point, which tends to be in July of the high school senior year, that they have plans outside of the Tennessee Promise umbrella, and so not completing community service. But you can see there in this particular cohort, 19,326 students enrolled. This is the 2019 cohort, by the way, with 20,651 students enrolling at a non-Tennessee Promise eligible institution, making up about a 62% college going rate in Tennessee in 2019. It's also important to note we are a nonprofit. We are not, although we partner with the state, we are not a state agency. We raise $3.8 million every year, much of this coming from private dollars, but we do receive some state aid, which we'll talk about a bit. $32 million annually spent on Tennessee Promise scholarships. So in 2014-15, when the state assumed Tennessee Promise, we began working with an endowment. So forever, we can say to the kindergartner, college is your destiny in Tennessee, which is really lovely. So really quickly, speaking to that breadth of work, our scope of work, we always talk about meeting each student where they are at scale. That's a big piece of what we do at Tennessee Achieves. 89% of high school seniors are served by Tennessee Achieves, 98% of Tennessee Promise applicants being served by Tennessee Achieves. And most importantly to me, 72% of all first-time freshmen at Tennessee's community colleges are our students, our Tennessee Achieves students. But more importantly, 86% of the graduates are Tennessee Achieves students. So thrilled at how we can be a big part of change. If there's nothing else you look at this slide and see, it's that our work really does matter in terms of moving the needle. So how are we doing at Tennessee Achieves? What's the impact? So I'm going to give you some big picture numbers, and then I'm going to break it down for you by our pillars and our programs that we operate. First year retention, that's a big number that post-secondary institutions look at to determine success. Obviously, our organization is a big part. We'd like to think a part of that infrastructure. So if you look at first-time full-time freshmen at our state's community college, that first fall and returning for the following fall rate is 54%, 67% for Tennessee Achieves students, and 74% for Tennessee Achieves students that attend any college, meaning students that are going to other colleges outside of the Tennessee Promise umbrella. You can also see here, if we're benchmarking 6-year grad rates, 35% for first-time full-time freshmen at our state community colleges, 51% for students who are a community college student going through the Tennessee Achieves program. I'm going to run through these programs on the side. What you can see here, though, just at a high level, is that over the years, we try to be really entrepreneurial in our work. We take data, so we look at our data, and then we couple it with student voice, and we create programs to continue to eliminate barriers that we see our students facing. And all those arrows moving in the right direction are showing that our programs are working, but I'll walk you through that in a bit. I'm going to give you our student impact by demographic. The equity gap that I talked about before is, quite frankly, something that keeps me up at night. If you look at our demographic of students, I'm going to walk you through this chart quickly, but you can look at the number of students who have enrolled, that first year retention, so fall, returning the following fall, and then our 3-year graduation rate for students. You can see for our Black and Hispanic students, enrollment is much smaller in terms of numbers, but it's on par with what you see across the state. First year retention, our Hispanic students holding strong with our white students at 68%. But you see here a discrepancy between our white students, our Hispanic students, and our Black students. Something, again, that we think a lot about at Tennessee Achieves. You can also see this discrepancy in our 3-year graduation rates. It's important to note that we have also included that TBR snapshot. So we are by far outpacing in many ways in 3-year graduation rates, but by no means are we doing as well as we would like to. And we're continuing to create and launch and execute programs to address and increase that graduation rate. Pell versus non-Pell. A Pell eligible student is a student receiving some type of federal aid, meaning they're more likely to be economically disadvantaged, considered economically disadvantaged. You can see there a 10 percentage point difference between a more affluent student versus their Pell eligible peer in terms of first year retention. Same holds true for 3-year graduation rate. We also pay attention to, and I'm sure many of our community college presidents pay close attention to this as well, the college ready versus non-college ready student. We're looking at that 19 composite score on the ACT to determine college readiness. And you can see there, probably no surprise to anyone, a student who is college ready is far outpacing their non-college ready peers. And then again, a self-reported first generation rate. If no one in your family has been to college before, that is a first generation student. If you've had a parent or a family member, oftentimes students interpret it this way, who have been to college, then what you're seeing is that non-first generation student. And no surprise, our first generation students not outpacing their non-first generation peers. So again, we've made a lot of progress over the years in this space in closing those gaps, but much more to do. And I'm going to walk you through the programs that we've launched and that we're executing to address these challenges. One of the ways that we continue to try to create champions in education and to ensure that we are supporting students exactly where they are in the college going process is by executing our volunteer mentoring program. The heart of what we do at tnAchieves, we are tasked every year with recruiting at least 9,000 volunteers to meet student demand. Again, if you think about that first chart, 60,000 new high school seniors coming our way every year. This is not Big Brothers, Big Sisters. That's an amazing program. It's not one-to-one. It's not meeting every week. Ours is I want to create groundswell in a community around our mentors understanding exactly where their students are in the college going process. So on average, our mentors work with 7 students with the understanding that not all 7 students want to pursue the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. Many of our students would like to pursue colleges outside of Tennessee Promise. And so you end up working with about 1 to 2 students and walking alongside them. We have a 72% mentor retention rate in terms of mentors continuing to work with us year after year. And we have 2 mentors on the panel today who I think have been with us since the very beginning, since we first launched in their communities. You can see here a point of pride for me is that 35% of our mentors come from business and industry. That's by design. We want busy, successful leaders in our schools working alongside our students and understanding their struggles. When we first launched Knox Achieves, so if you roll back to 2008, what you will find is that we were struggling with 82% of our students not being college level, so requiring some type of remediation. What we know, again, from those slides from earlier, is their chances of success drop significantly if they are not academically prepared for college level work. So we created a suite of summer programs. We have Summer Bridge, which is a 3-week academic boot camp that attempts to remediate students in English, math, and reading. We also have Summer Institute, which is now a 6-week intensive course-bearing program focused on the urban core in Memphis. That program, I will tell you, it's not on the slide, but I always have to share the results. 100% success rate with the participants last year. 83% of the students were Pell eligible, so meaning economically disadvantaged, and 100% of the students identified as non-white. It was an overwhelming success and continues to be year after year. You can see here, if you combine our programs, our first year retention grows dramatically. So for students who require remediation, that fall to fall retention rate is 50%, increases to 67% when a student participates in a Tennessee Achieves summer program. And that 3-year graduation rate increases as well. You can also see here, which is incredibly important to me, that we pre-survey the students, and 15% of them say prior to the program that they feel prepared for college. And you can see that number jump to 97% once they end their program with Tennessee Achieves. And I love this because they make friends, they meet the president of the college, they meet the financial aid office, they walk the steps of the campus. And so it's not only about the academics, but also about the social emotional aspects that we know to be critical to a student's success as well. Randy Boyd, our chairman, says that Tennessee Achieves is the largest community service provider in the state. I'm not actually sure if that's true, but our students have given back 3.5 million hours of service since we launched this pillar back in 2008. We get a lot of flack about community service, like something else for students to do. But I will tell you, our favorite part of community service is our job shadowing component. Many of our students are the first in their families to go to college, just like me. It's really hard to determine what you want to do with a college degree if you haven't had that modeled for you. And so job shadowing allows a student who may want to be a nurse to spend those 8 hours with a nurse, deciding if that is in fact what they would like to pursue. You can also see here, we survey our students every time they submit their community service, and 96% of them say they enjoy their community service. So we got to work on that last 4%. 96% is pretty good. For those of you who have been with Tennessee Achieves for some time, you know we are a communications engine. I will not spend a lot of time on this slide, but just know that 10 million emails are sent out annually and 6 million text messages meant to target exactly where the student is. So if you just coming right out of FAFSA season, if you've not yet submitted your FAFSA, you receive 10 text messages from us over the course of the season and 18 emails, both the student and the parent. So meeting you exactly where you are. But had you filed the FAFSA early, we moved on to talk about applying to college, registering for college, meeting with your advisor, all the really critical pieces that we know move the needle in terms of ensuring a student can find success. A smooth transition, always an important part of a successful fall enrollment. Thanks to the Haslam Family Foundation and in partnership with SCORE, Tennessee Achieves has recently launched Knox Promise. We're in our 3rd year of Knox Promise, serving about 2,200 students every year. Mr. Haslam came to our program and asked, building on the very solid foundation that Tennessee Promise provides, if you had additional funds and could really dig into one community, what would you build? Which is a dreamy question for us at Tennessee Achieves. Mr. Haslam sort of reading our minds. And we turned around Knox Promise. Knox Promise really combines what I think are 2 magical forces in this space, especially when you think about our most economically disadvantaged students. It provides every student who pursues Tennessee Promise in Knox County with a dedicated coach. So we have 5 coaches who are proactively, and I always say sort of intrusively, working with our students in Knox County, not waiting on the student to come to them, but every month connecting with that student. Yes, it's about academics. Yes, it's about their academic journey. Yes, it's about career exploration, but it's also about, what is your dog's name? What are you struggling with? Do you have internet? Are you doing your homework from your phone? Right? It's really meant to look at the whole student versus just the college-facing side of the student, if you will. You can see to date, we have also provided $213,000 in completion grants. So what's a completion grant? It's often referred to as emergency aid, although I really hate emergency in the education space. So we call them completion grants. They are small, what's often referred to as micro grants, but small grants that are meant to do really 2 things: support a student through a huge to overcome a huge obstacle or barrier. If you are hungry, it's really hard to focus. If you don't have the gas to get to school and you are a community college commuter student, it's really hard to be successful in your classes. So we are addressing things like food insecurity, transportation, housing insecurity. We've bought a ton of computers, all of which we think also allows the student to, the number 2 point, work less. So make school your job, which is true for many of our more affluent students. We also want that to be true for our vulnerable students as well. If you look at the launch of Knox Promise in 2019 and what happened across our state in 2020 due to the pandemic, you can see that supports really matter. I'm not claiming causality that Knox Promise was the reason that Knox County saw a 2 percentage point increase in their college going rate, but I do know that our coaches have really made a significant dent with these students, working alongside our college partners, working in concert with our school counselors. We were able to really right a ship that, as you can see, the state is really suffering. You can see here, we had a 5 percentage point drop in our state's college going rate. If there was ever a reason to be up at night, worried about the post-secondary pipeline, I think the time is now, and it takes all of us, if there was a call to action here, to right the ship. I also just want to briefly touch on what we learned from Knox Promise. We've been applying across the state. Coaches really do matter. Human capital really matters in this space. Having someone to mentor you, so that volunteer mentor working along the student as the encourager, the normalizer, the resource, the task manager, incredibly important to get them there. But when it gets sticky, having that proactive coach is critical. We have a program called Complete. So if Knox County has 5 coaches, the rest of our counties, the other 82, have 13 coaches that are digging in with our most economically disadvantaged students to increase the retention and completion rates for those students. We work with about 5,000 students annually, and you can see here, we've had a 45% increase in our first year retention with those students. We also, thanks to the General Assembly and Representative Sapicki, received some funds in completion grant for a completion grant pilot. So taking what we knew from Knox County and the funds that the Haslam Family Foundation provided us and saying to the state, what if we took this statewide and we could provide this to all students who fell into that economically disadvantaged category? What you can see here is that we received $217,000 each year for 3 years from the state, and we spent it in 7 weeks. It took us no time proactively working with the coaches. Our students came to us in floods asking to eliminate these barriers that I talked about earlier. You can see the majority of the funds went to our community college students. No surprise, 78% of our students are community college students. You can also see here that the completion grant wheel of what we spent, a lot of computers and tech, a lot of gas, a lot of groceries. These stories that we've heard from students are heartbreaking, but I'm happy to report that they have self-reported to us. So I'm not going to claim this yet as a super win, but our coaches are hearing from the students, and 85% of the students have returned from spring, which is a significant increase for that particular cohort of students. So before I turn it over to our panelists, so panelists be getting ready, I want to walk you through just a timeline. First year retention for economically disadvantaged students who do not have a tnAchieves coach across the state, 33%. Those economically disadvantaged students who have a complete coach with tnAchieves, it bumps to 66%. If you add in Knox Promise, which is every student receiving a coach, that retention jumps to 70%. And then when you combine, as I said, it feels magical to me, a dedicated proactive coach alongside completion grant funds, we see retention jumping to 78%. I do not have graduation rates yet in this space, but the moment that I have them, we will be sharing them. And finally, we're also trying to address what feels like a disconnect in the transfer space. Many of our students tell us when they enroll at a community or technical college in the fall, they want to transfer. Their dreams are to attend MTSU, the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, UT Martin, Sewanee, fill in the blank. But only 25% of them actually successfully transfer. So we've also launched, because of some state funds and some funds from our partners at SCORE, who are always so great to us in this space, a retention coaching initiative that really digs in with our college sophomores. We're working with about 900 students to bring them from community college over to that aspirational four-year institution that they were hoping to attend. So that concludes the data part. I know I went through that so fast, so I'm happy to dig in, but I do want to now stop sharing my screen and begin talking to our panelists. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to do a quick round robin of introductions, and then we will jump right in if that works. So first, we have Dr. Rebecca Ashford, who is the president at Chattanooga State and a longtime friend of mine, as well as of Tennessee Achieves. Rebecca and I go back almost 15 years, Rebecca, and yet we're both still 27. Not sure how that works out. We are, I know. But Rebecca is such a huge champion for students. I can think of so many conversations that I've learned so much from Rebecca, but she's always putting students first. So I'm thrilled that she is joining us today. We also have Janice Goldthreet, who has been also a longtime friend of Tennessee Achieves. Janice, anytime we have a panel, you are our go-to gal, which I love.
Appreciate so that.
And Hilton has been such an incredible partner for us. Janice, you've been mentoring with us since 2012. Is that right?
It's 2016, actually, 2016, officially 2016. Yeah.
I'm adding 4 years, Janice. Well, thanks so much to Janice for being here. And then the star of the show always, our student Oscar is with us today. Oscar recently sat down with the Undersecretary of Education to talk about his journey. Oscar began at Motley State Community College and has successfully transferred to MTSU, where he's pursuing a math degree. No one likes math, Oscar. This is so amazing. So thrilled to have the three of them join us. So I'm going to start with you, Rebecca. You have been with this program for so long, but as a friend to the program, as a vice president for student services, and now as a president, what do you think the impact of Tennessee Achieves and Tennessee Promise has made on students, on colleges? Just talk about it from your perspective.
You know, I think about, the more I think about this, the more I think about the impact on not just the students, but on the colleges. And so, yes, on the students, I think multiple things. First, it made college attainable with the idea that no matter what, my tuition would be covered. And I think that's something that a lot of families had never thought about before. So I think for some families that never thought that college would be possible, it changed the conversation surrounding education. So I think that's a huge piece of it. Also, I think, this is for families and for community colleges. It shifted the attention, particularly when it became Tennessee Promise on a statewide level. Families who had never considered community colleges were now starting to think, this could be a really good option, because that is such a good financial decision for the family. So I think there's that piece as well. And then for the colleges also, of course, we initially saw this great increase in enrollment. It was at a time when community colleges were experiencing enrollment growth anyhow. And I think this really contributed to that. And as you shared earlier, most of our students are Tennessee Promise students. And I remember back in our early conversations at Pellissippi State, and we would be talking about, those Knox Achieve students. I'm like, well, the Knox Achieve students are our students. They're not some special group. They are special, but they are our students, and this is a partnership. And that's another piece I want to point out, is that I think back just a moment ago when you were talking about back in 2008, 2007, maybe even when it was first being discussed. And we were meeting with you, Krissy, at Pellissippi, and some of the questions you would ask over time, and then the initial conversations and over time, I think really helped us as a college, and I think you still do this, help us to do some self-reflection and go, oh, let's look at our processes from an outsider's perspective, and does this really make sense? And then finally, for the students as well, and for the colleges, I've spent my career in community colleges and typically on the student services side. And one of the struggles we've always had is getting people to apply early enough, getting people to complete the FAFSA early enough so that the process would be smoother. And that has always been a struggle. Well, Knox Achieves, Tennessee Achieves, now Tennessee Promise, it helped address that in a big way that the colleges simply could not have done on their own. So I think that the impact has been great, not just for the students, but also for the colleges.
Yeah, and I think, we get asked a lot because I talk to a lot of other organizations that are external to, right? I always think we're external to K-12, we're external to the colleges, and they have a lot of struggle working with their colleges, and they ask for advice on that. And our wins are your wins, right? Like our students are all your students. So I think what's been so great for me is that we have such a strong partnership to be able to say like, hey, this really isn't working for students anymore. Or you say I can hear you very specifically, Rebecca, saying like, here are the confines that we got to work in, but let's make the box bigger, right? Like, and so I think that has been a win for students over the years.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
So Janice, Drive to 55, increasing the percentage of students who are graduating, earning a credential, and becoming viable members of the workforce has always been a pillar of our work at Tennessee Achieves. We didn't name it Drive to 55 until many years later, but that workforce component has always been so critical. What do you think that the impact has been on an employer like Hilton when you think about the launch of Promise or the work that we've been doing across the state?
So the hotel industry that I work in is one of the few industries that doesn't absolutely require a 4-year degree or higher, to have a career. So what I feel we've been able to accomplish through Tennessee Achieves is getting even more qualified workers that can take on roles in our hotels and even at our corporate office here in Memphis, because many of the positions don't require a 4-year degree. So what they're looking for is maybe some basic skills. So whether it be typing, computer software applications, that sort of thing. So when we have students come to our campus, they are just floored to see what we're doing here at the corporate office. And then some have had a chance to tour our hotels. Again, they're floored to see the variety of jobs that are being offered. And I mean, when I got to visit TCAT Memphis with some students, they had no idea that their cosmetology training could be utilized in the hotel industry at the resorts because those services are offered there. We don't have a property that size here in Shelby County just yet, but hopefully one day we'll get to see it. But we do have that within the industry across the U.S. So the drive to 55 has just been a huge resource for us as an industry, the hotel industry, to have so many young people, or really people of any age, having just some good basic skills that can now step into a role and start building a career in our own industry.
And Janice, has that changed your relationship with like a Southwest or a TCAT? Like everybody's sort of under the same umbrella, pulling toward the same goal?
Not at all. And here's the reason why, because the schools are offering different opportunities. So not every student that I have encountered is really going to be ideal for Southwest. They're not really that interested in pursuing a degree, although that is a 2-year degree, and they don't want to go beyond. So when I have students that are looking for something that's less of a time commitment, less of an academic commitment. They just kind of want to get that core training. That's when I can direct them to our vocational schools. And that works very well for some students. So each student has, unique circumstances, and not everyone is going to be, geared toward the college track. That's okay. I'm very thrilled to put them on track to the vocational school. So I'm able to support both types of schools about equally, really.
Yeah, we just want them doing something after high school, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I think TCAT is an amazing option for many of our students, just like our community college are, just as our community colleges are. And, many of our students are dead set on a four-year institution. We just want you going to the place that feels right for you. I mean, I know Rebecca would feel the exact same way about that. Okay, Oscar, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about your story and then how Tennessee Promise helped you get to Motlow and then on to MTSU.
Okay, so for me, I lived in Alabama for most of my life. And when we were there, the topic of going to college was not there because financially didn't think about it. I knew there was the Pell Grant, but I felt like that wouldn't be enough for me to actually go along, and having just the worry of financial aid really was it. So when we moved to Tennessee my sophomore year, I was able to get information about the Tennessee Promise, Tennessee Achieve, and stuff like that. And so I'm from Lincoln County, so down there, that by Fayetteville. So when they were telling me about this, and they're like, you can go your first 2 years for free, that made me like, oh, I might have a chance. I might be able to go to college because I'm also a first generation graduate student from a high school. And so I'm also being a first generation college student as well. So that's been a nice thing so far. So I ended up going to Motlow because I wanted to stay home for the first 2 years. And I was able to finish up my associates there this past May. And I moved on, thank you. And then I moved on to MTSU because I always wanted to teach, and they had a great program for teaching secondary education. So that made me want to go there. So I'm here. I have it's been fabulous here too. The support is great from everywhere that I've been. But yeah, that's a bit of my story.
So can you talk to me, Oscar, about, was Tennessee Promise a difference maker for you in the space of going to college? Because I know you got a lot of fire in your belly and you were going to figure it out, but was it helpful to you at all?
Yes, when I heard about it, that was like a relief, a big relief, because I'm like, wow, 2 years for free, like what kind of thing? Where else can you get something like that? Like I didn't see other places offering that or getting that. So I was like, it's a big major change, and that made me really go more into getting my bachelor's and then my associates and then moving on to my bachelor's.
I love it. That's so great. We're so proud of you, by the way. Huge
well, thank you.
You got all kinds of love in the chat if you haven't scrolled to look at it. So much love.
I have. And I appreciate everyone.
So great. All right, Rebecca and Janice, you've mentored a long time with us. Why do you think the mentorship component matters? I think it makes all the difference. And I know year to year it's different. Sometimes you have students who are involved. Sometimes you have students who are not involved. Some are communicative, some are not. But why do you think it matters? Janice, I saw you come off mute first. Do you want to go?
So I view my role as a mentor, as kind of being a student advocate. So I recognize that, there's some hurdles that students can face to get enrolled in college, especially if they are a first generation student. They may not even have the full family support. So having a mentor is important because they've got at least one person, number one, that's in their corner supporting them. Number two, that person is able to answer questions, help navigate around or through or even eliminate some of the roadblocks that they may encounter. So the role matters very much, in my opinion, because the students may quit. Oftentimes they hit a roadblock, they don't know how to navigate it or eliminate it. So the easiest thing to do is just quit. But if they have a mentor kind of cheering them on, taking them by the hand, so to speak, and helping them to work around it, they have much more success, or much more greater chance of success in getting enrolled in that first semester.
I love the way you put that about student advocate, because that's exactly right. And, you know, in thinking about the students I've mentored over the years, you know, there are some that they really never need you. You know, they're going to be fine whether you're with them or not. And there are some that if it weren't for you, they would quit, they wouldn't be there, they would give up. And it's, you know, I think of, we're a safety net as well as an advocate. And so if the student starts to have trouble or starts to get confused or just needs to reaffirm an answer to a question, they know that you're there. And those, everyone who's served as a mentor who knows that, you know, sometimes you're not feeling like you're getting a lot of love because they're not responding to your text messages. And, you know, there have been many times in the last, gosh, when you said that, 15 years, 14 years, where I thought, why am I doing this? It doesn't make a difference. And then you realize you are making a difference. And just because someone isn't responding doesn't mean that you're not helping them. And I'd love to share this story. It happened in Knoxville long time ago when we used to have the tnAchieves specific orientations. And one of the students I had mentored was a panelist. And she was, I can't remember the question she was answering, but she said, you know, and if I have a question, I just text my mentor, Rebecca Ashford, and she responds. And I was like, oh, it made a difference. So you never know the difference that you're going to make in somebody's life, even if they're not responding to you. And we all have to remember, it's not about us, it's about them. And then, you know, I one of the things I love about mentoring, and this has more to do with, it's more of a global perspective, and hearing from Janice, I think helps affirm this for me, is it helps our entire community understand who our students are, what types of supports they need, and how important all community partners, whether you're an employer, whether you're a nonprofit who's also an employer, you know, no matter what walk of life you are, it's all caring adults working together to help our high school students transition to college. So that in and of itself is enough. But then getting down to the individual student is where you really make a difference.
Yeah, I think so huge, right? I mean, not only is it that relationship with the student, and thank you both for pointing out, I think every mentor needs to hear that, like, 7 out of 7 of your students are not going to be responsive to you. We say it all the time, but it's like if your mom, someone other than your mom says it, right, and it's more meaningful. So I think that's so good for our mentors to hear. But I also think, like, to both of your points, creating these champions in the space of what our students go through to actually make it to a college degree is huge. I have a great story, and I will not mention the mentor's name, but of a CEO in Nashville who was working with a student with Metro Nashville Schools. And the student worked after school, and she was talking to her mentor about how exhausted she was all the time. And she was like, why are you so tired? You're 17 years old. And she had to get up every morning at 4 a.m. in order to catch a bus, to go to the bus depot, to then get the bus to get her to school on time. It was like the wackiest thing you'd ever heard. But this CEO was like determined to fix the bus route and like became such an advocate. So, you know, yes, it's about post-secondary education, but it's like, wait a second, why is my student getting up to catch a bus when school doesn't start until 3 hours later? And so it does create this ripple effect for positive change in the community in the name of doing what's right by students. So I love that. So Oscar, talk to us about, we've talked about the financial component of Promise, but Can you talk about any non-financial assistance that you've received from Tennessee Achieves or Tennessee Promise? I walked through our coaching model, our completion grant model, all of those things. Any of those things make an impact on you?
Well, I think mostly my completion coach, Holly, I forgot her last name, but she was a great, like, she would always help me with like anything I had. Like, I would have sent her a message and be like, hey, question, do you know how to, like, can you help me here? Like, it would either be like for FAFSA, and she'll be like, hey, she's like, I'm free at this time, or I'm free right now. Let's jump on it. Let's get to it. We can get it down together. I know this past semester when I was doing the FAFSA, like, I didn't have Holly, unfortunately, to go to, but I'm like, I was like, gotta do it. I gotta remember what Holly told me how to do this. And I was able to do it on my own there. But the financial, like, just the emotional support, like, if I'm having like a rough week, it always seemed like Holly knew, and she would send a message saying, hey, how are you? Or, hey, if you want to have a little brief conversation, let me know and I'm down for it, something like that. So she was great support there. But yes, like, she would always support there. My mentor, my original mentor, never showed up to my first meeting, but the lady who was beside my table, she ended up really being our new mentor. And I'm not sure if she, like, that everyone else was aware, but like, she gave us her number and she's like, I'm willing to help you. He's, even though you're not mine students, I'm gonna help you either way. And so she also has been someone that like I reach out to, and I think I still do here and there at reach out to her too. But yes, like, those were the main ones I've used while
Yeah,
being in Tennessee Chief.
I think that's awesome. Supports matter. Holly's the best, by the way. Huge shout out to Holly. So I think supports
Yes.
really do matter. And not only is it our mentors meeting their students, our students where they are, but also our coaches who do a phenomenal job. Well, I'm going to ask Ben to hop on because I do see some questions in the chat. Ben, who was the original cohort of Knox Achieves. Look how far you've come, Ben. You have questions for our panelists or for me?
We got a few. First, I just want to say, Oscar, you're the best. Great job. I don't think anybody's ever received that much love in one. It's just a love fest for Oscar over here in the chat. But great job. And thanks, Dr. Ashford and Janice, for always being game to join us. Got a couple of questions. We have some questions for each of you, actually. Oscar, I can start with you. Somebody wants to hear a little bit more about the transfer process. So was that easy? Was it hard? Did your credits transfer with you? Talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So when I was transferring over, I talked mostly with my advisor and my completion coach on like where to go about that. Cause I'm like, this is the first time rodeo for me. So it's like, what am I doing? So I talked to both of them, and they, along those lines, we were able to see that Motlow had offered a transfer path. So all my credits were able to transfer over with nothing, like, simple. It's very easy for me. My transfer was easy. I smooth as it could be. Like, I feel like that was possible with my advisor from Motlow and my completion coach as well, Holly.
Perfect. Well, yeah, and I think a lot of students have a similar story in that Tennessee has really made it simple to transfer from community college to 4 years, especially when you're going somewhere so local. Motlow and MTSU work so closely together. So great.
And Ben, can I add? I was also a transfer student. So I transferred from Jackson State Community College in Jackson, Tennessee, to the University of Memphis. So I will also add, don't be surprised if there could be some slight hiccups. I did find that there were a few core classes that did not transfer over, that had to be repeated at the University of Memphis, but that's okay. So number one, my tip is talk to your professor. So I was actually able to talk to a professor who basically gave me the grade of the class that I took at the community college, as long as I came to class and, didn't make trouble.
That's awesome.
So work with your professors on that. But then also too, as Oscar mentioned, talking with your advisors in advance can be very helpful as well. And then, of course, don't forget to look for other financial aid resources in that process. So I was able to attend on a transfer scholarship between the two schools that I won. But then also there's other scholarships that the university offered that I want to make sure people, be aware of that and try to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I was also a transfer student when I was a student.
I was about to point this out, that all four of you are community college transfer students. Look at that.
Look at that. That's awesome. And very easy. I even had an experience when I got to the end of my bachelor's degree and I needed 1 credit hour to finish out my degree. And we were able to go back to my Pellissippi catalog and find a class that was able to fill that bucket. Yay! And I was able to graduate on time. So it's all of these little things when you transfer that can really make it great. So thank you for answering that. One question for Dr. Ashford. Somebody has a question about career exploration. So when a student is a prospective student, what type of assessment or quiz do you give a student to try to help them get into a program that's going to, fill their cup?
So each college is going to have access to resources that are usually electronic career interest tests, abilities, skills. Some of them will align to your values to help students really try to navigate what is it that I should go into. At Chat State, we try to get as many students as possible to do that at the point of admission and try to build that into our process. And then we have, of course, academic advisors who can help students once they've determined what they want to major in. But then we also have a career services office that can help the student do even more exploration and look at, what they might be good at, what they might be interested in, what might align with the way they want to live their lives. And, do they want to work virtually? Do they want to have to travel? What does that look like for them? And then also to look into, what careers are in demand, what are the salary ranges and that kind of thing. At Chattanooga State, anyway, we require a college success course, and some of that also is built into that class.
Perfect. Oscar, another question for you, and you may have kind of already spoken on this a little bit, but if you were ever in a situation while you were in college, or maybe even now, where you feel like you want to give up, what are some of the things that motivate you and keep you motivated to push on through?
Well, see, back when I was at Motlow, it was mostly really the huge support I had, and from not even from tnAchieves, but I've had other support from family members, even to like teachers, as most of them knew that I wanted to get into the education system. So they knew, they're like, do it for them kids. And with the ability that I got from job shadowing and doing my promise hours, my community hours, I was able to work at a local school for a year. This past year, I worked, I did most of my classes online. So I was able to work with students and see all that. So now that I get difficulties on oh, I don't want to do this, I get exhausted. I look back at some pictures and I'm like, wait, I'm doing this. I'm being a teacher so I can see them and help them and be like a role model for them as well.
That's awesome. Do you work on campus now at MTSU? You have an on-campus job?
Yes, I actually do work on campus as well here at MTSU. I'm part of their, I'm a staff member for their MTeach office. So I work in their office there. So yes. And this is why you're probably wondering the background. There's a bit math stuff. There's stuff that's involved in our MTeach program because we have our own closets where students can come do work and do such things here.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. That's pretty much all the questions that we have. There was a question, Krissy, a little bit along the lines of outcomes after graduation, students landing in particular job fields. Are they finding careers in their program of study and those kinds of things? Do you want to speak on that, Dr. Ashford? You may also want to speak on that a little bit.
I can speak on it to say this. They're earning more than they would have been if they didn't take part in our program, and they're actually more employable. As says Dr. Bill Fox from the University of Tennessee, who has been studying our work since we launched. So we entered a partnership to do a longitudinal long-term study with the University of Tennessee. So every year we send them over our data. So this is first 3 years of Knox Achieves data, which that has been taken out almost a decade now. And so thinking about that employability for students in the long term is something that we will continue to revisit with Dr. Fox and his team. So it is very much top of mind. I have a CEO in Knoxville that has been on my board since the beginning, and that is what drives his motivation for being a part of this work. So it's great to get them in, Krissy. It's great to get them a degree, Krissy, but what does that mean for their long-term career viability and their quality of life and their ability to contribute to the community? And so we are very focused on that. So the more we learn as we pick up larger cohorts of students, I will be happy to share that.
Can I chime in on that as well? So, of course, I'm so glad someone asked that question, because that's a great question, because there is so much focus on retaining students and graduating students, but looking at that those post-graduation outcomes is really important to look at. What's the impact? What's the impact on the student's life? Because it's really what it's all about. And so we look really closely at Chat State, and all the community colleges do, and the TCATs. When students complete a degree that's made to go right into the workforce, we look very closely at, are they getting jobs in their field? And are they getting jobs, first of all, and is it in their field? And we typically have, for all degree programs, in the upper 90s for placement. For some of our programs, it's going to be like 100% placement. I think of our nursing and allied health programs. My gosh, if you graduate and you're a nurse, you're getting a job if you want one. And then we also look at our transfer data, and are our students successfully transferring, and then how are they doing at the upper division? And usually those numbers are also pretty strong. But I'm so glad someone asked that question. And then I do want to mention, there was a question about Reconnect, and I just want to say that at so many of the colleges, and certainly at Chattanooga State, there's a lot of support for adult learners, and I'm really proud of the way our adult learners have actually wrapped their arms around each other and created a support system that helps one another. So some of that is college led, or sometimes we just drop an idea and the students run with it. It's wonderful.
I love that. And I love that Tennessee is known for Tennessee Promise and Tennessee Reconnect. I mean, it really is this bookend. Everybody has the opportunity to earn a credential if they want to, with a lot of support around it. Like money matters. The financial, I always say it's the carrot that brings students to us, right, Rebecca? But it really is all the work that Rebecca's doing, the support we get from individuals like Janice, who then take it to Hilton International and say, this should be a priority for us. And then it always comes back to students like Oscar, and certainly, like I always like to poke, like Ben, who have made this program an overwhelming success. So first, just a huge thanks to all of you for always being such a friend and supporter of our program. I am continue to be incredibly grateful for all of you. I hope today gave you some insight into what we do at Tennessee Achieves. Again, I sort of opened with, it's about student voice and stakeholder voice coupled with data, and that is always the direction we're moving in. So what are those two things telling us? Do we need to scrap a program? Do we need to build a program? And so I hope you had some insight. To view our annual report, it's on the website somewhere, Ben, on the website. Ben could tell you more than I could, but it looks great. And if you have any questions about numbers or any part of the program, never hesitate to reach out. So thank you all so much.
Yeah, so you guys will get an email as soon as this is over that will have a link to view the full annual report on our website. So definitely appreciate all of you for hopping on.
Thanks so much.